So the next question is regarding unlearned and innate skills. Okay. So what skills have you learned on the job versus what skills did you already have innately to be a successful, natural TV presenter, journalist?
Wow, that's a really good question. Things like, well, live TV, that's a skill. When you're working in live TV, you'll work with an earpiece and you'll have a team. So you'll have an earpiece in, and they'll be telling you what's happening next. Where you're going to. Which camera to look at. So learning to take direction through an earpiece and being able to speak and communicate to the camera without people realizing that you're getting instructions in your earpiece. That can be sometimes disconcerting. The first time I had it, having a voice in your ear is like, oh, whoa, this is really, really strange, and having people, and there'll be lots of people in the gallery. So you're connected to an earpiece, and that earpiece will be connected to a gallery. In that gallery, there'll be a director, there'll be an editor, there'll be someone a producer, there'll be maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 people. There'll be the auto cue person, and you'll be hearing all of those voices with a heck of a lot of information. And so having to learn how to use maybe one side of your brain to disseminate that information and understand what is useful, and how to translate what is useful in your ear to a way that people will understand, that's friendly, that doesn't sound like it's been rehearsed on camera. That was a skill that I had to learn when it comes to live TV. Also learning to talk to time. If you're working on live TV and you need to go to the ad breaks, for instance, when I was presenting the Paralympics, I might be talking about, I don't know, Tatiana McFadden breaking the world record in the 400 meters. And then they're saying to me in my ear, in 20 seconds, we have to throw to an ad break. And after the ad break, we're going to go straight to the wheelchair basketball. And they'll say, but you've got 20 seconds to do that. So learning to summarize what's happened and then tell people what's going to happen and then throw to the ad break in certain amount of time. That's a skill that I've had to learn. The things that I've had innately, I've been fortunate, as you can see right here, is I'm a chatterbox. I can keep talking for as long as until the cows come home, as we say in the UK. So luckily, I'm good at talking. I'm a good communicator as well, and I think I'm good at empathizing and understanding people's stories and trying to translate a person's story or their journey to the general audience.
Yeah, definitely. And be able to adapt to the different personalities and situations on the ground. So what challenges did you encounter that you didn't foresee, even after you learned those skills?
When it comes to travel journalism, travel is definitely a big part of it. Learning to, well, not learning, but being able to deal with fatigue. Sometimes you go away and you'll travel to 2 or 3 different time zones. You'll be on planes for hours. You'll be in cars for hours, and so learning to keep yourself healthy, getting enough sleep, dealing with dangerous situations, being in countries where you don't know whether what's around the corner. There could be security risks. There could be it could be a country that's at war. There's risks of being kidnapped. All of those things I didn't really think about when I embarked on becoming a travel journalist. But also, I think something that was really important is safeguarding. Often I go to countries where we're dealing with really sensitive stories. Um, I mentioned being in Vietnam. And we will have people. Well, I've been in Vietnam to do a story on Agent Orange, and it was dealing with the impact that your interviews and your communication with the people will have on them once you leave, because that's something we take for granted. You know, especially when I went to Mogadishu, it was the same. You know, we dealt with people who may necessarily, the government at the time might not agree with them, and you have to be careful that you don't put them in danger when you're out there. And you also got to be careful that there is a plan that is put in play to take care of those people, and to make sure they're safe once you've left. So yeah, it's quite complicated, you know, when you're working in journalism and broadcast journalism. But it's, you know, it's a lot of fun and it's a privilege.
Yeah, and it sounds like you're not a one-man band when you go on these shows, right? It sounds like you have a group of people with you that is collaborating on the project.
Mm. Yes and no. So you tend to, it depends on what type of project you're doing. So if I'm going to a project where, for instance, uh, I did a documentary series called Unreported World. So if you go on YouTube and you type in Unreported World, um, Channel 4, and my name, Ade Adepitan, you'll see this series that I've done. And this was where we tried to tell stories that the mainstream journalism doesn't tell, that they forget to tell, or they don't think is popular enough to tell. So for instance, I went to Cuba and told the story of basketball players who were defecting in Cuba in order to find a way of to improve their life, and improve their sporting careers. I went to Mexico and I went undercover to report on a group of people with psychiatric with mental illness, who were trying to report on human rights infringements by the Mexican government, who were taking people with schizophrenia, with bipolar, and locking them up in psychiatric institutes against their will. So those type of stories. And also, you know, I was in Malawi making a story about people who were losing their eyesight because they couldn't afford to get a cataracts operation. And those sort of stories, because you're in countries where you have to be able to move quite quickly, and you don't want to cause a fuss. You don't want too many people to know you're there. You go in a small team. So it's usually two of us, a PD, which is called a producer director. So it'll be a director who can shoot with a camera and who produces as well. I will help to produce with them as well and do the sound as well as the presenting. And then we'll have a fixer, on-ground fixer, someone from that country who knows the language, who knows the infrastructure of the country, and that can get us in and out of places. And so you will travel with three people maximum, which helps. But then if you're doing a big glossy production, like I did something called The World's Busiest Cities, which is being shown all over the world. I think the BBC USA are showing it, Netflix are showing it. We went to New York. And when we went to New York, we went with a crew of like 20 people. You know, we had like 4 cameramen, 4 sound people, and that's glossy and that's nice and chilled out. And
Just to continue on to what you just said, that sounds so exciting. Um, what is behind the scenes? What does it look like behind the scenes? I know it's different than what's on TV, obviously. Is there something there that we may not necessarily know is going on?
so TV studios can be very intimidating the first time you go into a TV studio, because there are a lot of people who go, it's a big team that goes into bringing a TV production onto air. Um, I think things are changing now, because with the internet, everybody is now their own TV studio. You know, you're able to do this with just relatively a small amount of equipment. But if you go to, BBC studios, ITV studios, I'm sure in America in NBC or what's the other one?
CBS, ABC.
CNN, yeah, or ABC, all of these different channels, you know, in the studio, you'll find quite a few cameras. There'll be like two, three, maybe even four cameras in the studio from different angles. You'll have an auto cue person. I think you guys call it a teleprompter. So some presenters like to work with auto cue or teleprompters where they'll have the script on the screen that they'll work from. Some people, I like to, I don't mind. I can freelance, or I can work with the auto cue or the teleprompter. So you'll have some person who's in charge of that. You'll have another person who's in charge of the counts. They'll be doing the counts, what time, how long you're on screen for when you go to ad breaks. And you'll have a studio, a floor manager who's in charge of the people, who's in charge of the crew, and he's in charge of everything, or she's in charge of everything that's on the floor. You'll have someone who's controlling the audience, the makeup people. So they can be, 20, 30, 40 people behind the camera. So when you're watching it, you'll see one person, or maybe you'll see two or three people on the couch doing an interview. But behind them, there'll be like a whole team. And that's just on the floor. Then in the gallery, there might be another 10, 15 people up in the gallery who are controlling the cameras and everything like that. So it's the number of people that is needed to make a TV production work.
Wow, that's amazing. And so, just to summarize, what skill sets does one have to have, whether you're working for a travel channel or doing journalism stories, or you've done your stories are very diverse. You've done an array of different topics.
One is communications. You've got to be a good communicator. And when I say good communicator, I mean not just being able to talk, but being able to explain sometimes complex situations, complex stories, and being able to break them down into a simple fashion. One of the one someone who I see as a mentor, a guy called Eamon Matthews, who works for Quicksilver Productions, who's taught me so much when it comes to journalism. He always used to say to us, when you're making a show, no matter how complex it is, no matter who it's for, if it's a documentary that's on late night TV that's hard hitting about war zones, or if it's a story, a consumer story about someone who's been ripped off at their local supermarket, you have to imagine that when you're getting across that information, one, it's entertaining, but two, it can be understood by every person from every walk of life, whether it's an old person who's in their 70s or a young kid who's in a young teenager, or even a young 7 or 8 or 9-year-old. And so to be able to communicate you in a universal fashion, but not patronize people, I think is really an important skill. Secondly, you have to be inquisitive. You've got to be nosy. You've just got to always want to know what is going on, to find out more. Constantly have this like, but why? But why did that happen? The why is the crux, it's the essence of every story you do. Initially you set out the landscape by telling people how it happened, when it happened, and all of that stuff. But what really gets people is the why.
Did you like this video? If so, share with your friends and be sure to follow us on social media. And if you want even more resources, be sure to sign up for our email updates on our website, trapesandglobal.com. Keep learning new perspectives, keep being inclusive, because it will make the world a better place for you and for everyone else. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you on another episode of the Trapes and Global on Wheels podcast hour.